I am Joshua K. Sabra, Esquire, and he is Dr. Miles Salisbury. And you are listening to the Miles Ahead podcast, where we share tactics, techniques, and protocol to improve your physical, mental, and spiritual health while you walk the path of the warrior. Stay tuned. In today's episode of the Miles Ahead podcast, Dr. Miles and I go over our personal definitions of the warrior ethos and how it applies to painful injuries, painful real-life trauma, and how easy it is to succumb when you don't have a working philosophy to support you in your personal and professional and physical trials and tribulations. Stay tuned. And we're live.
Recording in progress.
That's it, baby. Miles, how are you doing, man?
I've been better. I decided to, it would be fun to blow out my Achilles tendon coaching soccer. That's a classic idiocy of not listening to your body. My Achilles have been hurting for like 2 weeks. I'm like, oh, they're just sore. And I was just running around during the scrimmage. And this is like the third week of them hurting. And I did this just quick turn, and I was like, motherfucker, one of these kids just booted me in the back of the fucking ankle. Like, that's what everybody says when they tear it. It feels like somebody kicked you really hard. I thought that someone did, and there was nobody around me. And it hurt. It didn't hurt as bad as I thought it would. Like, it hurt. But yeah, the hardest part is the non-weight bearing. I'm in a boot. I have this fucking thing that I get to put my knee in and like peg leg pirate around in. It's pretty sweet. Yeah, it's been pretty dark. I've done this before though with my ACL, and that was a pain in the ass. This recovery is a little bit longer and more nitpicky at the end. So yeah, I'm just preparing myself for a descent back into Hades again, and nothing like having your wife have to put your underwear on you in the morning to destroy the ego. And I was kind of laughing before, like, it's the same action. If she's taking it off, the ego likes it. But if she has to put it on, the ego feels emasculated. So all these small things add up to, like, I have to relearn every little movement, every little routine I'm doing. Oh, that doesn't work now. Oh, I have to do this. I have to sit to shower. It's just like you have to rethink your whole life and get really detailed and small. But it's a good challenge. And I'm fighting the desire to collapse within and just say, fuck it, or see it as a challenge. And which speaks to what we're going to talk about on the podcast today about the warrior ethos as that, like sort of psychological and spiritual, physical warriorship. So I'm right there on the edge. Some days I'm better than others. This just happened last Thursday. So I'm still like in the sort of denial that it's even happened phase, but it sucks. Really sucks. I have Dr. Kaluza, who one of the Blazers doctors who works at our gym, who's a badass. I went right to him. And he didn't even have to ultrasound me. He just put me on the table and looked at it. And he's like, yep, grade 3 complete tear. It's like, oh, great. I thought it was a 1, but it's the worst one. So non-weight bearing in a boot for a long ass time. I'm trying to do the Aaron Rodgers protocol, everything he did, short of being able to get stem cells, which would be amazing. Maybe I'll do that if I can get a hold of like 30, 80 grand or something to do that. I don't know how much it costs out of pocket, but I'm sure that speeds the process up. But I'm drinking bone broth. I'm taking all the supplements. I'm not putting any weight on it, all the things you're supposed to do. In 3 weeks, I have a follow-up appointment, and the doctor will tell me whether I can start PT already or not. And the one caveat is I'm supposed to fly to Denver on the 23rd to do Traver Bohm's Working with Men course out with Phil, who's been on the podcast, Phil Horning. We're doing that together. So That's gonna be interesting. How do you get through the airport? I've seen people wheeled around in wheelchairs. Maybe I'll complain and have someone express me to the terminal. Just a lot to think about. A lot of life change in a short amount of time. So it's been interesting. That's a very long-winded answer to your question, but uh, a lot's been swirling around up there.
Well, answers the question, what are you listening to?
Podcasts. I got back into. Have you read Untethered Soul before?
No, you already told me what you're listening to. You weren't listening to your body before, and you're listening to it now.
I forced to. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Uh, just kind of synchronistically, I was listening to. So Michael Singer, the Untethered Soul author, has a podcast, and I was listening to that, and I think it was synchronistic and timely because it talks a lot about relax and release. Where your mind wants to go and do shit, just relax and release. And like that's been a mantra for me. When my mind wants to go dark or force outcomes, it's like, no, relax, release. What's right here in front of you? It's all you can really deal with. So I've been doing a deep dive. And I wore one of Traver's shirts. This is tenant number 12 of his Man Uncivilized Ethos. Fight hurt, play through the pain, keep going. Trying to keep that as a mantra as well. I'm just pulling out all the shit to keep me from going dark. I know I will have to do a descent and go there and sit in the fire. It's the Negredo period in alchemy that the Jungians talk about when you go to the dark, the Negredo. But that's where you have the transmutation into the gold at some point. If I remember correctly, they were talking about back in the day something about how ash is so special in that time period. They have like Ash Wednesday. Ash is special because it can't be burnt anymore.
Hmm.
Isn't that crazy? Like it was like a thing for them. Like there's something special about that. You can't burn this shit anymore. You can't burn ash. So ash is like it's down to its base element. And so I think that the metaphor is like sitting in the fire. So what needs to be burnt away can be burnt away, and what's left over is the ash, which is what you need when you descend down to Hades and hell and reclaim shit that you lost. Like this has really forced me to slow down and think and reevaluate lots of things. So it's kind of hard to avoid the descent, and the more you avoid it, I think the harder it gets. But you also don't want to obsess about it either, because that makes it also not helpful. So there's some middle way that I'm trying to work with this. All the old trainings and shit are coming back. I'm just trying to line it up. What are you listening to?
I'm listening to you right now.
What are you listening to?
I'm listening to you right now.
You just had a question. I interrupted. Sorry.
I was trying to really listen to what you're saying. And there's two themes that strike me as poignant. One is, you called it out at the beginning. You said it's very classic to not listen to your body. And it reminds me of this tarot card reading my girlfriend drew last night. She drew the Hierophant in reverse.
What?
The Hierophant card. A Hierophant is like a high priest.
Okay.
And in reverse, the Hierophant is like your intuition, and the in reverse it is, what have you been ignoring?
Mm.
And that question is one of the most valuable questions and the most frustrating, because we don't hear and don't know something precisely because we've been ignoring it.
Mm-hmm.
And asking like, what have you been ignoring, is kind of like asking like, hey, on your drive into work this morning, what were how many stoplights were red, or how many were green? And you don't remember because you actively block out like all the details of your commute because they're not important.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the act of like acknowledging something like what you have been ignoring is like, you have to go back to your felt memory and then re-experience something and basically be with a different part of you, right?
Yeah. Different parts. Yeah.
And
Tarot cards are amazing, man. That stuff is spooky. The Jungians got into that stuff as well. I don't what deck you're using. There are multiple versions, and it's all projectives to me. Like you project onto the meaning, but sometimes it's like mystical. Like the last time I had one of these descents when I did my ACL, some friend I knew, she had a deck and she pulled three cards and it was like the Death and the Hangman and some other fucking bad one. I'm like, do it again, do it again. And she shuffled and shuffled, and two of those three came back again. And I had the worst breakup of my life and an ACL tear. So two of those came true. And the third one, it was something better. I'm glad I had to reshuffle because I couldn't deal with the third thing. But, uh, I could be making this up in my head that this is a real thing, but it happened. But I like the idea of like you pull a card and like the one you pulled, like you made a version that makes sense for you that you can do as a projective, which is also good with tarot cards. But who knows if they're the mystical things. I think Jung used them as projectives, but I'd have to read more. He has a whole Jung in the tarot. I think he called that in one of his collective works. Like he's done a whole thing on that. But it's interesting stuff for sure.
well, I'm reflect that back to you. What when you think about your ACL tear and that breakup, you said that was the worst breakup um of your life. Those are the words you use. What made it so bad?
Uh, wasn't expecting it. There was some cheating going on. This was someone I thought I was going to marry. I hadn't opened myself intimately to someone like that since another uh, woman I was dating that I lived with in Europe who I thought I was going to marry. I think a lot of me shut down after that, like just to protect. And a lot of childhood wounds came up. The fear of abandonment came up. Um, it just went really dark. Had suicidal thoughts. Every day was just talk about Negredo and Descent to Hades. That was one of the worst times of my life. Some other things happened too, but that's one of the things that made it bad. It was like the carpet's been ripped out underneath, and you weren't expecting it, weren't ready for it, kind of thing. And then I turned my ACL, and I met her playing soccer too, which is their other ironic thing.
So what
Circle.
what so it was you had an experience that was counter to your expectations, right? You think you're going to be with this person forever,
Mhm.
and it turns out to totally go the other way.
Mhm.
In hindsight, were there any signs that you were ignoring?
Oh, likely, yeah. I mean, I was young and naive still. You know, ideas of relationships were so naive and vanilla. uh, I think I was still doing a version of the quote unquote nice guy that we talk about. Um, I don't think that was very appealing to her in the end. Um, if I sat and thought about it, there were probably a lot of red flags that I was missing or not wanting to see or didn't know were red flags till I learned oh, that's a red flag. I should notice that next time. A lot of this stuff was learning about being in a relationship like that.
So I like that you pointed out that the way you were showing up was dysfunctional, and then you also realized that the other person was giving you some telltale signs that you came up with.
Mhm.
So, with your ACL tear, was it like someone tackled you in soccer?
It was a bizarre one. So yeah, I was playing soccer and I tweaked my knee. It's like, oh, that's the meniscus. I limped off the field, went to that one of my buddies did his ACL and he's like, oh, you should go see this surgeon. And this is in Boulder. She was really good. Uh, and so we go in for surgery and I get it done and I come out of anesthesia and she's like, your ACL is completely torn also. And they didn't see that in the MRI. Like they messed up. I really fucked up. And I don't know when I tore that. Probably I kept asking, like, how? She's like, well, you used to be a dancer. It probably slowly tore and you didn't notice. Sometimes that happens. It doesn't completely go, it slowly deteriorates and you're just sore and you don't know it. So I had to go back under a knife 2 weeks later and do all that shit all over again. But that recovery is way worse than meniscus. Meniscus, you're back and moving around in a couple of weeks. This one, like 9 months to a year of hell. So that's what this one's going to be with the Achilles. But I'm not doing, as of yet, the surgery route. I'm doing the letting it heal on its own. I'm still going back and forth with the data on whether it's that much better or not. If you're a top level athlete, yeah, you probably should do the surgery. It gets you back quicker. You get a little bit more functioning. Like my doctor was saying, his wife is a marathon runner, and she wanted to go get the surgery, and he was like, well, the studies say, are you sure? Are you sure? It really doesn't. It's like a 5% difference. And she's like, yeah, I'm a marathon runner. 5%, like that's the difference between winning and losing sometimes. So she did it, but even he, an orthopedic surgeon, was like, take it or leave it for me. So I'd rather not do surgery because it sucks. I don't like going under anesthesia and stitches and all that malarkey. But I'm talking to him again this week to see, because you have to figure it out pretty quick. Can't wait, because it's already starting to heal on its own. So that's what the boot's for. It keeps it isolated so you don't put pressure. Every time you put pressure, it kind of re-tears it. So you want it to like not get scar tissue and just kind of heal naturally, come together naturally. So that's why you have to be non-weight bearing for so long.
So, with your injury before, this is you've got the reverse Hierophant card, right? Ignoring the signs with that before that breakup, not knowing what they are, but also, ignoring things. The pain when you were dancing and being an athlete, and assuming that pain is part of the sport, which it's not true, right? Of course,
yeah, absolutely.
Be achy and sore and tired, but it's interpreting what that pain meant. And you re-experience that at 46, feeling pain for weeks. And what story do you tell yourself as you go through the what's known in the medical community as the prodromal state of an injury? It's the non-symptomatic state. So you have no pain, but altered joint mechanics. Then you have pain and altered joint mechanics, which you started to experience. And then
what's altered joint mechanics mean?
Altered joint mechanics means that the length tension relationship on that joint are they're outside of an optimal range or a performance range. So for your shoulder, you have an equal amount of tricep tension and bicep tension. When you flex your bicep, your tricep but when you have biceps tendonitis, right, you have too much tension on the bicep relative to the other muscles that are working against that humerus. So what you have is called congestion or inflammation, right? Tendonitis becomes tendinosis. Whole joint mechanics are in unfavorable tensions placed on a joint, right? So you don't know that. None of us know that. This is highly technical, right? So what you're experiencing is pain, but what story are you telling yourself about your body, right? And the pain you're in when you're, in your Achilles, because you're teaching, right? We talked about this a few times in the pod where you're teaching them drills, you're playing soccer, you're working out in the gym, you're doing all the normal things, right? But you're in pain. So what is your story about pain? What does it mean to you such that you find yourself in the state where you have pretty severe injury?
Probably that I can push through it because I have before and it's gone away, like just running, just jogging. Like I'll take a break and rest a week and it's gone. And usually that's been the case. Something different about soccer, like soccer and basketball. If you're not in peak form, you can't just do those explosive moves without risk. And guys are more likely to tear their Achilles for some reason. I don't know why. And then age is a factor, of course. But it did hurt. They did hurt. And I remember someone saying a long time ago with Achilles, like if they really hurt, like don't push it, like rest them, make sure there's no pain before you push them, or you can injure it. And that was not in my awareness. If I would have remembered that, I probably would have slowed down. Um, I wasn't really even going that hard at first, and then I kind of got into it a little bit because it was fun, and that's when shit went down. So yeah, just probably still thinking I'm 20 in my mind, maybe something like that. Like this is part of aging that I think we will all have to fight. Is like, I fought like, oh, I don't want to warm up. I hate warming up. Like that was a new one for me recently. I probably should warm up. I like had the elbow injury. Like, yeah, I got to do the internal external rotation before I do chests now. And so joint health is like a new thing for me. It's just a pain in the ass. But now, it's just part of the workout. I've let that go. That it's just the thing I need to do now. So this will be a new thing. Like tendon health will be a thing. I'll probably be doing these whatever PT exercises I get for the rest of my life just to keep it shrunk so I don't do it again. Because I'm dumb. I'm gonna go back out and play hoops and soccer again. I'm gonna go back to jujitsu. So I've got to stay on top of it.
Do you really think you're dumb?
I say that pejoratively. It's just so I'm not gonna. Let's just say this: I'm not. I feel better mental health wise if I do these things rather than just give them up out of risk, not out of fear of getting hurt again. I'm the kind of if I don't work out, like I feel depressed, and my body needs it. Being a dancer was the same way. I don't know, something about expression. Playing soccer and basketball just feels good. Doing jiu-jitsu just feels good. There's something about me and the body that's been there my whole life. It's sort of like was it Da Vinci talks about? I don't even know if this is a real thing, like the 7 intelligences or something like that, and somatic intelligence is one. Like if I have any, it's that one, like good coordination and good. If you put me in something athletic, I can figure it out. It might not be the best, but I can do it pretty quick. And that's probably the reason why I override the science of pain. So it's like I should be able to do this. Other areas of intelligence, like put math in front of me, I'm completely lost. But yeah, I know I'll keep wanting to keep going. So I just have to be careful. I have to bring wisdom as I get more crystallized intelligences. Mr. Brooks, is it David Brooks? The other Brooks, can't remember his name. He calls it crystallized intelligence. Whereas you get older, you have a bunch of natural intelligence that's built up for a long time that you can turn into wisdom versus like a fluid intelligence or stuff that you're learning in your 20s. That's just you're still building up the memory palace. So I have to actually bring that to bear now.
Yeah, none of that sounds dumb though, right?
No, I was just tongue in cheek. Like it's just funny. Like my brother's the same way too. He's worse than me. Like he's one speed. It's stop and go. He just goes. Like we're just kind of intense in that way with sport.
Yeah, but there's it's not what I hear you saying is it's difficult for you to parse out the part of you that loves the the mental health that comes with physical health and the nuance of the sensitivity that's required to sustain it over a lifetime.
Yeah, it's listening to that because it feels disappointing. Like, oh, I don't want to do that right now, but I don't want to have to do that. It's like, oh man. Like, my daughter's going through this whole period of like, she just wants to play, and so she has to pee, and she just hold it in. Like, no, just go pee. She's like, but I want to play. Like, just go pee. It's just the same idea. Like, you're gonna pee your pants. You're gonna blow out your Achilles. It's the same. I don't want to do it because I'm having too much fun. That's what it is.
Yes. And it is the responsibility has two sides to it. Every responsibility has the empowerment part, which is the part that gives you, excitement and the thrill. And then there's the obligation part, which is what you have to do to keep it or to earn it, right? So, like, if you're willing to take on the responsibility of having a full client book or having multiple revenue streams, you have a good cash flow and you can be financially free. Unfortunately, that means that you have to be accountable to your commitments, right? And so sometimes you can't do what you want to do. You must do what you've obligated yourself to, right? So with the health and fitness, and I think this is important because mm, every single day I talk to people who have no sense of the actual obligation of good health. And, to exactly what you just said, I appreciate your just willingness to go right to it and articulate it. It's like, it's not as fun to do all like the 15 minutes of warm up that is required to work out safely, or the 30 minutes of gentle exercise that allows you to play soccer or explode, right? And um no one, I think there's this a conception, it's a misconception that there are people that get away with not doing that.
Yeah.
The NFL, in the NFL, they're in their 30s and their 20s and they warm up for 90 minutes, right?
Yes.
We're good. Like the whole fucking day is a warm up, and then they have 30 minutes of actual running sprints, running routes, and doing their game, and
Yep.
then it's over.
Yeah.
You know,
It's a good point. The warm ups are really in depth and long. I forget about that for my playing days. Like, yeah, like 45 minutes of stuff to get the body ready.
and it's hard too because that's what we're trying to communicate on this podcast and my YouTube channel. It's like most of the success that you see if someone have is due to the practice and the boring shit they did when no one was watching.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
the obligations. Those are the
Yep.
obligations, right? And we admire the people with the discipline to keep their obligations even when there's no stakes. Well, the stakes are pretty high, right? If you were trying to learn to play the guitar, keep your Achilles in your body.
Yeah, they're high. They got to do the rehab properly.
So, um, to take it back to the verbiage you said, to make it a more precise description of yourself, instead of just calling yourself dumb, you would say, "I'm, um, I'm enthusiastic," and another way to say it would be, I'm hasty.
Yep. Yep. I just want to do it. Yep. And what other do what's fun. I'll make the warm ups fun. I'll make the PT fun. Because now I know the value. It's like, oh, if I don't do that, then I do it with this darkness. I don't want that anymore. So let's do the warm ups.
Absolutely.
Is it getting over the ego part too of like still feeling 20 in your mind and like that's but you're 20 years older than you actually are. Like not wanting to let that go. There's part of my ego that doesn't want to admit that part of me is aging. And it doesn't, that sucks. But I
Well,
mean, it's pretty good. I'm almost like but I'm 47 next month, like 3 years to 50. If this is hitting me now, that's pretty good. This hits most people like 37, 38. So give myself a little bit of credit here.
I mean, some people they learn it when they're 20 because their coach makes them do an hour and a half of warm-ups. I mean, it's very context dependent, but one of the things that you called it age, and I think there's a piece, of course, there's a piece that has to do with age, but I think a lot of it is the context, or look at what else is happening in that, because I've worked with a lot of athletes with these injuries, and they're men, like you said, but they're a little bit older, but what they are is they're heavier people, and they're not beginning athletes, right? Because when you're a beginner, you don't have the strength to like push a bunch of energy through your hamstring. So
Yeah.
you don't pull hamstrings.
You don't get hurt. Yeah.
But when you can sprint and you've been sprinting for a while and you have power, now you're actually testing the fibers of your body.
Exactly.
So you're able to push more energy through it. And that amount of energy needs warm up, right? You don't just want to, and I catch myself doing it all the time because I see the high school and the college athletes doing their long jump tests, and I want to show
I'm
off.
still there too, right?
Yeah, I want to show off my stuff. And I was like, don't be an idiot. Do not hop in and do a 9 foot long jump
Yeah.
and do your hamstrings so you can just get nothing for it. But here's the so but But here's what I want to come back to the language piece, right? And this is we're actually going to get to the meat and potatoes of this podcast, and we took the long way there, which is great. That when you say dumb, it it inspires your subconscious to behave accordingly. But if you say hasty, it does the same. But hasty also has the added addition of that additional value of it doesn't it's not late it's labeling your enthusiasm, right, and your passion and your willingness to go fast, but you're not giving yourself a label that will make it more difficult to learn a better way, right? So if you say I'm dumb, and if we consider ourselves stupid people, which obviously I don't consider you stupid, and I don't really think you believe that. But if you fight me on the language, there might be something there. But when we go to hasty, it's like, all right, I was enthusiastic, I was going a little fast, and now if I want to continue to play into my 50s and 60s, I just have to give myself an extra 15 minutes, right? Hasty is easily modified, right? Um, and it speaks to a different character trait that we're that we're cultivating, you know.
Yeah, I use dumb as like gallows humor, just to lighten it. I don't really mean that. I just, it's just funny. Just as something to lighten the darkness.
What's funny is imagining your wife dressing you every day. That's funny.
Yeah, we're still working that one out. I'm getting it down to where I can do it myself. But at first, yeah, before I get this knee thing, because that makes my hands free. I couldn't because I was on crutches. The terrible for your armpits and your wrists.
You have good upper body strength, though.
Yes, that's another thing. Like all the weird dance moves I've ever learned, and upper body strength is coming into and balance. It's coming into play again. Like, oh, good thing I know how to catch and turn. Like I've done spins on this peg leg, like to turn around, or like my left leg's it's getting really strong. It hurts. Uh, but yeah, these things are all coming back into actually be helpful, which is really interesting.
What do your daughters think about your crutches?
They want to play with them.
Very
They
fun.
don't really quite understand what's going on. They just know daddy's grumpy and hurt, and he has these weird devices now that they want to play with.
Well, that sounds like they got a pretty accurate read on the situation.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, so let's talk about the warrior ethos and the purpose of this podcast, because I think I think it's good to flesh out, and it's evolving, right? Because we're in 60 more episodes, we'll come back and we'll probably redo this episode because we'll have more to say. But um, when you think of the warrior ethos, what comes to mind?
Uh, your own code. There are many throughout history, like they have the Bushido for Japanese. Ethos, according to actual Stephen Pressel's book, the on the nose, the Warrior Ethos, great book. I'm going to pull from a little bit from here. He was saying how the ethos comes from the same root word in Greek of ethics. So, what's good? For me, it's finding out what your warrior code is. What does it look like? How do you enact it? What's not it? What not to do? What to do? And that doesn't have to be static. It can be ever changing. Some things could stay the same. Some things could adapt and upgrade. And like you said in the beginning, before we started talking, everyone has a little different version of this, and that's fine. Just make your own.
So, if you had to distill it, you can obviously borrow from whoever you want, wherever you want. What do you like about, what would you keep from, whether it's yours or Pressfield's, or what do you think belongs in your warrior ethos today?
This injury is timely for this. It's a whole fight hurt thing, like the shirt says, like play through the pain. Just what can you still do? It just doesn't mean collapse and give up. but it also doesn't mean ignore that there is no pain. It means tend to the pain. Just, keep moving, keep doing what you need to do. Like I'm drawing upon all the stuff I've ever learned to keep my sanity through the whole thing, and then all the lessons learned from the last time I did something like this. And you have a spiritual warriorship, a psychological warriorship, and a physical warriorship convergence, at least for me right now, that need to work together to make this heal and for me to move on and recover. So it's forcing you to move slowly, and that can be good because I go real fast. My mind works really fast, and it's really hard to experience your mind going really fast when your body goes nowhere, because usually my body is going fast. So it's a juxtaposition I'm grappling with, but I think it's probably healthy for me to have to do that. So I'm still working that out, I guess. I think it's right now, it's a spiritual psycho-spiritual, biological, physical convergence of some sort, warriorship. And I'll pull some quotes from this book that I think spoke to me or what we're trying to do in this podcast. So I'm still fleshing it out for me, what it means to be a warrior. I know we did an earlier podcast on some of the archetypal versions of that, and some of those still ring true. But like you said, this is going to be an ever evolving explanation. But what about you?
Well, what I heard you say is that there's a large component of resilience in
Yeah.
being a warrior.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, there's a component of endurance.
Yes. I actually just was thinking about that the other day. Your job is to endure. I think my body was built for endurance sports too. Like I was thinking about it earlier, like you ran track and did all the long distance endurance sports. Soccer and basketball are endurance sports. Uh, so I just have to apply that, and psychologically, like endure. I have to slow down and become more present, take things more day at a time. Use Michael Singer's relax, release, not get caught up in all the forcing outcomes or freaking out or all the things that the mind or the heart that he says wants you to get hung up on. Just kind of from your highest self, just watch it happen. Like an IFS, just watch the parts do their thing and not get caught up in what they're trying to tell you to do or fix. That's been really hard, but it's a good practice.
The Untethered Soul. What's the name of the author?
Michael Singer.
Michael
Great.
has one of my favorite quotes I got from him. He said, "If you want to know why you're doing something, stop doing it and see what happens."
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Stuff will come up.
he was using it in the context of addiction and cigarettes. And they're like, "You want to know why you're addicted to cigarettes? Stop smoking and watch what you do."
Mm-hmm.
And um, essentially, all of our activities are just coping mechanisms for the pain of being human.
Yep.
And workaholics figure out an identity and they stick to it, and the work makes them feel good. Alcoholics, sexaholics, and you can have more than one addiction. Trust me, I've doubted all of them. They're
Oh
great.
yeah. You can have a buffet of those motherfuckers.
Um, so I'm pointing out the themes in your life, right? Slowing down, listening to yourself, and who would you be what would be I'm using that from that book or from his one of his books.
Mm-hmm.
What would happen if you only slowed down? If you stopped, if you weren't so hasty, if you listened to yourself for a little bit longer than you want. And you and me are similar in that way. I'm not going to do a 13-day silent, retreat, but I can't. It's powerful for me to turn my phone off for an hour and set my watch and be quiet and see what happens.
Yep.
Because that is a challenge for me. And so my best ideas come when I stop trying to do things.
For most of us, that's why you have the shower or driving in the car experience. You have the aha moments when you're sort of idle. Boredom can be good.
So, for you, there's a large component of enduring to endure in the um, in the Warrior Ethos. Um, I there's a Warrior Ethos that I ascribe to, and I basically just copied and pasted it from the Soldier's Creed and the Warrior Ethos, which is still to this day on the Army's website. It's their primary centerpiece for philosophy, and it is: I'll never quit, I'll never accept defeat, I will never leave a fallen comrade, and I will always put the mission first. So inside of that ethos, there is implied endurance. It's also that you will never quit regardless of the circumstances. And we'll get into circumstances in a second because that plays into the next piece of the warrior ethos. But inside of that is we'll do it together. When I won't leave you behind. If we're on a team, then we'll go together. And it might be slower, and I'm gonna drag your dead body behind me, but we're gonna do it together. So there's honoring our comrades and honoring ourselves. And I'll never accept defeat. So whatever has to be done to get the touchdown, we're gonna do. As long as it's legal and you're not violating the Geneva Convention, right? You will do whatever it takes. And sometimes that means not going on a mission, right? If we're trying to move the ball forward, maybe we save our ammunition for the right day. And that takes discipline, right? Uh and there's a lot of sort of implied tasks inside of that ethos. But there's you get the sense of inevitability, right? So I'm gonna win no matter what. It's inevitable. You also get the sense of um rain or shine, right? There's a level of resilience built into that, like you were talking about. And that I do it as part of a team, right? Those things are all part of that ethos. And because of that, and this segues into the kind of the purpose for this podcast, if you're captured, it is your duty to escape, right? So if you're captured, unless you're injured and escape would just kill you or, or cause them, it's your duty to escape.
Yep.
So you're mandated to comply with all lawful orders and then find your way out. And, most of us will never be POWs, thank God. But in the context of our broader life outside of a military context, I think this is where the warrior ethos bumps into my definition of being a man. And it is, if you're a man, it's your job, it's your duty, and whether, you take it on or not is a whole nother thing, and most people never get there. But it's your duty to accumulate enough resources to protect your family and everybody in your community. And those resources are physical and mental, right? The physicality to show up and physically actually be around and not be addled, not be vacant mentally, not be high, drunk, and addicted to things. Sometimes drunk. In my version, that's allowed. But 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 basically to be present, physically and mentally robust. That financial resources so that you can provide food, shelter, safety, security, and community to the people around you to some degree. And that you don't have to be Elon Musk to show up to a food bank and donate some time and bring your friends and help people and your fellow Americans eat. You don't need to be very wealthy. You can donate blood, back to the physicality part, right? Or plasma. All of these things help, and they're all they have aspects of physical and financial embedded in them. And then the the third sort of pillar is your personal and social relationships. But essentially, my definition of being a man is to take it on as a duty to accumulate the physical, financial, and emotional resources to be of service.
I like that. Yeah, that fits.
And that's it. So warrior ethos, it's inevitable. I'll do whatever it takes. And I'm a man, so I'm gonna make my community safer. I'm gonna be resourced and resourceful enough to resource myself if I don't start out resourced to get there.
Be a good citizen.
That's it. That's it. And someone say, well, I know women that do that. Of course, many women do that. Yeah, lots of them. In fact, right now they're smashing men every one of those, like physical health, mental health,
Yeah.
financial health.
Yeah.
It's like if there was a mercy rule, we would have thrown the flag in.
Yeah. We got some catching up to do. Yeah.
So so for me, that's the purpose of the pod, right?
Mhm.
Uh Most of the time, um, I'm with Tony Robbins on this. Most of the time, we have the resources we need to get what we want. We just don't have them organized properly. We
Mm.
haven't committed the energy in the right place. We haven't committed the time in the right place, or we haven't allowed our perspective to shift. So, I was poking you on your perspective and your words and what you're learning from your experience with your injury, because the I'll give you a very short synopsis of how I didn't learn the lessons when I was injured, and then I would immediately it was revisited upon me immediately, so fast, so fast. But I 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, 3 years ago, in 2021, I was in a bike accident, broke both my arms, was very debilitated, um, and through the you know charity of my community, my friends hosed me off in a kiddie tub and, you know, took out my trash and brought me food and got me dressed. I literally had a guy came over a couple times a week to turn on my shower for me and help me get undressed so I could get into the shower. I could get dressed and I could kick the shower shut off, but I couldn't with my arms turn it on. So I had assistance getting into the shower for months. And it was painful and humbling and all those things that you're experiencing. And I
Absolutely.
learned very little. I learned very little. And part of it, I like intellectually, I wanted to learn the lessons, right? I was saying the same things you're saying. I was saying, oh, I need to slow down. I need to let people help me. I need to stay humble. I need to be more thoughtful, more careful with myself. I need to all the blah, 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 all the things. And then as soon as like my arm got out of the sling, as soon as I could start to do what I was doing before, I went back to work and I was coaching and I could barely pick up a dumbbell off the dumbbell rack and I was like trying to coach clients and live my life. And part of it out of necessity, you have to earn money, you have to eat, and pay the bills and all those things. But I didn't really internalize anything. And I um I was out of the I was out of the hospital for probably about 6 weeks, and I was out of the sling for about 2 weeks, and I started to feel pain in my gut, and I started to feel um just nauseous all the time,
Hmm.
and I couldn't keep down water. That was when I couldn't eat food. I would vomit it up, and then the last couple of days, I couldn't even keep water down. I would vomit up water, and so it was in tremendous pain. And I just sat in my living room. And every day I would say, tomorrow I'll probably feel better. And I'm just going to, just keep on keeping on and endure. And uh, I woke up in the middle of the night in the most severe pain I've ever been in my life. And having just broken both my arms, that's saying a lot. And I realized that my appendix was about to rupture. Uh,
Oh, good.
and I Googled because I Googled the symptoms and I was like, fuck my life. I need to get into a hospital right now.
Yeah.
So I go to my phone and I actually left my phone in the Uber that I had taken earlier that day.
Oh my God.
So I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm going to have to pound on my neighbor's door at 1 in the morning so that they call the police and the police take me to the fucking, whatever. I'm going to have to do something.
Gotta save your life. Yeah.
And then I just sat on my chair for a second. And I was like, well, you don't have to do anything. You could just die.
Mm, mm. Dark moment. Yeah.
And I was just thinking, I was just sitting there and I was like, why is this happening to me?
Yes.
I was saying.
Yes.
And the answer was so that you understand that every day that you are on this earth, you're choosing to do something. You're choosing to stay. You have a reason for being here because you've decided to. So it's up to you to find that reason and live in alignment with that.
Mm,
Not for anybody else. And the punching will continue until you admit that you're the one that is doing this. You're doing everything. You decide to be different, or the punches will continue.
right.
So I got on my laptop. I texted my friend who works at a hospital. I told her my symptoms. She called me an Uber. I got to the hospital. My buddy, who had just taken me to the hospital not long before that for a different surgery, he came and picked me up. And he asked if I wanted to stay with him. And I said, no, no, no. I'm ready. I'm doing something different now. I got it figured out. And I felt night and day different. I mean, when your appendix is about to rupture, the amount of pain that you're in is out of control. So I felt completely different the next day. I felt so much relief. But the thing I really felt was that I'd actually learned the lesson that I had been trying to avoid for almost 40 years. And it is like, you're not a victim. This isn't happening to you. This is happening for you. You're opting into this every single day. And you decide, no one else. You decide what it means. You decide why you're here, and you stop pretending like you're like this is happening. This is all the ill fate of the wind. So that was my experience with what you're going through. And I did everything I could not to internalize any of these lessons. And I was disabled so fast, right? You know, like so immediately afterward that I started to understand like, okay, I get it. I'm willing. I don't even know what different is. I'm just willing to admit that I've been not addressing the right things. And that's when I uh I told my therapist, I was like, we had talked on the phone and I was like, hey, I know we said we were gonna do like a once a month thing. I was like, I want to go once a week, and we're gonna go every week until the we figure this out.
That's the psychological warriorship. Yeah. You
And
get after it.
yeah, and it's like I don't know what we're gonna talk about. I'm sure you'll help with that, you know, and I'm gonna do my
Yeah.
best to stay in the conversation.
Yeah.
And and uh and I got into psilocybin, and I had a really an escorted journey with that. That was very important. I didn't know it at the time, but it was very important to increasing my window of tolerance for good emotions, which I didn't have before. There was a lot of things that had to happen. They happened in the right sequence, but it starts with a decision to do something different, and it was feel different. I wasn't even looking for strategies. I was I needed to feel different. And so the reason I'm sharing that with you and the podcast is because I don't really think it's about information or it's about ideas. Ideas are really important. Strategies and tactics are really important to execute, but I have to be willing to admit that I am uncomfortable with the uncertainty
Mm.
that comes with saying, I don't know,
Yep.
you know, and, and and here's the other thing. If you're fat and broke and alone and you're dealing with something painful, there's a lot you don't fucking know because you don't know how to create the resources that you actually need. And I say those things not to beat anybody down who's broke, been there. And that story, I was 2 months behind on rent. Why do you think I was so motivated to go back to work? Right? Because I was trying to work my way out of it.
Yeah.
It's not a work harder thing. None of this stuff we're talking about is a work harder thing. You have to have a different angle of approach. You have to have a longer lever. You have to come at it with a different set of tools. Otherwise, you're just going to recreate the painful present over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's the wheel of samsara in Buddhism. Just merry-go-round. Yeah, jump off that, exhaust your karma, stop making new karma. That's a whole nother tangent.
No, actually, let's talk about that. Stillness is when you stop making your new karma, to your point, and that is the thing that if you were a dude, and you're listening to this podcast, and you're a warrior, and you're a doer, and which you probably are, if you're listening, dude or not, you're listening to this podcast, you're a doer. If you're a doer, stillness is like the fucking antithesis of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You actually have to. What's happening is, to your point, Miles, the consequences of your actions have landed, and you have to let them land. And that's good and bad. Sometimes we have to be accountable for the good things that we do as well. And I fucking resist that too. It's not bad feeling, good feeling. It's just feeling.
Yeah. The sitting in the fire. That's what I said earlier.
Well, talk about why it is. Because the first thing that happened when I expanded my window of tolerance was I was able to feel more joy. So talk about why when we depress emotions and repress emotions and messengers, why we repress the good ones and the bad ones at the same time.
I think there's a safety in numbing out and checking out, especially if we're really overwhelmed and stressed. And Connor Beaton talks a lot about men when we get stressed, we reach for numbing agents, distracting agents. So I think that's one part of it. And then of course we don't want to feel pain and we want to maximize pleasure. That's normal. But when we go for pleasure and we have a sort of an addiction or attachment to it, then it immediately causes suffering because when it's taken away, it hurts, right? That's the whole thing of non-attachment in Buddhism. It's okay to have these things, but if you can't live without them when you're attached psychologically, emotionally, immediately they cause suffering because the threat of even losing them causes anxiety. Well, there's suffering. So, and that's real hard to do. That's spiritual practice, down to like your family. Like that's gonna be the hardest one. Like, don't be attached to your family. Like that's hard. It's real hard. Uh, so you start with the low hanging fruit. Start with lighter things and work that practice. That's the spiritual part. And you have to choose what that is for you. This is just the Eastern approach. And then you have the Western Stoic approach and other approaches, Christianity, things like that. You have to find what works for you. But it all has crossover. I don't know if I answered your question, but
Well, the question is like, why can't we? So, but when of course, we want to avoid pain and have more joy and pleasure, like you said. But why is it when we numb out pain, we numb out joy too?
because when you numb out, you're numbing out feeling.
Yeah, we can't select what's numb. Everything gets numb.
Everything's numb. Yep. It's just a purgatory sort of meh, blah, anesthesia sort of state. It's protective, but yeah, your ability to experience pain and joy, yin and yang, are just sort of neutralized for the moment or checked out. That shit goes to the shadows and does push-ups and comes back later and causes more pain, especially when you suppress the pain part. Even the joy part, like, why would you willingly want to suppress things that bring you contentment and joy? Well, probably because you're afraid of the feeling of having them and losing them. There's an attachment quality to it. That's why some people they put up walls in relationships. After that bad breakup I was talking about, I put up massive walls because I was afraid of having that come in and having it ripped away. And it took a long time to, put a window or two and maybe a drawbridge on that wall so you could start letting people back in with openness. It makes sense. It's protective, but then you're basically putting yourself in your own little prison. Like, yeah, you can wall that out, people out, but you're making yourself your own little jail cell. So that's going to be a numbing and a checking out. You can do that, but it sucks. You're missing out on the joie de vivre, joy of life in French, all the good stuff. So, but the risk reward, it comes with pain.
Yeah, it's there's a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote on what does it mean to have lived, and there's a one of the many things in that quote he talks about to engender the affection, the honest affection of children, and earn the uh betrayal of false friends. Uh,
Hmm.
and I like that he put that in there because the a lot of times when we are betrayed, which I feel very I feel a curiosity towards that statement. But when we feel betrayed by a friend or someone we trust, a lot of times we think it's because we did something wrong, but it just really just reveals the character of the person that you're dealing with, right? And the context that they hold themselves to their loyalties and agreements. And um it's part of living a good life is being vulnerable enough to be hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not easy.
So, um, we talked about our definition of warrior ethos and masculinity or manhood. Stephen Pressfield has a bunch of good Greek sounding words in his book, right? Is it Andreas and Dynamos? You know, these qualities from your book. He talks about the Spartans have a different quality of warriorship than the Athenians.
Yeah, he talked a lot about the Spartans versus the Athenians. Yeah. The first one I had, I just tabbed, and bear with me because sometimes I tab things and they're like, what are they tab that? And which part? But this one says the warrior ethos involved from the primary need of the spear toting, rock throwing, animal skin wearing, hunting band, the need to survive. This need could be met only collectively as a group working in unison to bind the band together. An ethos evolved, a hunter's ethos. Oh, every warrior virtue proceeds in this courage, selflessness, love of and loyalty to one's comrades, patience, self-command, the will to endure adversity. It all comes from the hunting band's need to survive. At a deeper level, the warrior ethos recognizes that each of us as well has enemies inside himself, vices and weaknesses like envy and greed, laziness, selfishness, the capacity to lie and cheat and to do harm to our brothers. The tenets of the warrior ethos directed inward inspire us to contend against and defeat those enemies within our own heart.
That's right. So good. He's obviously spent a lot of time being a good writer, that guy.
A long time. Yeah.
The one of the things that he does really well is he states the unstated.
Yeah.
Um, really, really great writers talk about things that you felt but never named.
Yeah. 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 Put words to it. Mm-hmm.
Stephen Pressfield does a good job of that. And the you can even feel right encompassed in that version of what he was talking about. He was also talking about togetherness. He was also talking about endurance, right? Inevitability, discipline. And he names some of the, contrary, feelings and emotions as well. But um, it's you can see how when you read this book or have that, Army's definition or other things, you can see how they're borrowing from each other
Yep.
heavily, and it's that's a good sign.
Yeah. Yeah. I like how we talk about the inner battles as well, because that absolutely is a thing. Uh, what do I have here next? There's a well-known gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps who explains to his young Marines when they complain about pay that they get two kinds of salary, a financial salary and a psychological salary. The financial salary is indeed meager, but the psychological salary, pride, honor, integrity, the chance to be part of a corps with a history of service, valor, glory, To have friends who would sacrifice their lives for you as you would for them, and to know that you remain a part of this brotherhood as long as you live. How much is that worth?
Mm.
You know, I think that any boy that wants to be initiated in manhood reads that and goes, "That's it." You know, there's a way to do that. You know, just join the Marines or join something that's giving that kind of virtue. It's just that's archetypal right there. That's like what are we doing here? Are we here for cars and toys and nice things, or we're here for honor and serving each other and helping each other? You know, that's probably gonna feel a lot better. Yeah, it's nice to have shit, but that's like secondary to what he talked about. And it's service and it's sacrifice.
Yeah, and the essentially, it's our ego that wants to create conditions around our own commitments to ourselves, right? He mentions this in interviews. I don't know if he mentions it directly in the book, but you talk about the salary. He's like, it's somebody who doesn't want to take on because he's a writer. He doesn't want to take on a writing job if he doesn't get a advance or doesn't want to take any risk, like, be do a stringer job in Turkey for free so they can be on the ground as something's going down. And it's like, what are you here for? Like these are the real opportunities, and you want to make it conditional that you participate. It's like, no, you're lucky to be a part of this, right? Like, and yes, there's practical concerns, of course, but most of the time, uh, we're gonna live and die, whether or not we get those new Nikes or we have a nice car. What we really want to be doing is be a part of something that we care about.
Yeah. And to further onto that, uh, this is another key element of the warrior ethos, the willingness and eager embracing of adversity. And this is the classic one. In 1912, the Antarctic explorer Ernest Shackleton was seeking volunteers for an expedition to the South Pole. He placed the following ad in the London Times. I love this. Men wanted for a hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success. The next morning, 5,000 men lined up to volunteer. What is wrong with us? Why do we do that? It's just amazing. It's amazing.
No, you're taking the wrong lesson from that. There's nothing wrong with us.
Again, I'm joking. I'm joking.
The vision is what everyone is missing, right? It
Yeah.
is, it isn't that people are not willing to work hard. It's that there's no clear vision in so much of other people's companies or their teams or their process, right? If you have a clear vision, like, yeah, everyone wants to cut their teeth on something valuable and be a part of something. But being around people who can articulate the vision, that we have any faith or making the actual earnest effort to accomplish that vision, that's rare. And that's why that's that's why Jocko has a leadership company. Leadership is so valuable. Everyone has ideas, but that's not a vision until there's something articulated that and executable on that idea. And it's just so rare. I love it, man.
Yeah, me too. There's something just really good about that. Let's see. Well, this is kind of long. I don't know if you need to read that. Um, yeah, these are kind of long. I don't want to belabor, but get this book is really good. Warrior Ethos, Stephen Pressfield. You can read it in a sitting. It's really short, but it's on the nose with a lot of this stuff. A lot of it does relate to the military over time in history, but um, it gets into some archetypal stuff too, as well, from Carl Jung, which I appreciate. That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah. He's on the money, man. Well, your injury is calling you to slow down, to listen, to be humble, among other things. Um, what 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 do you think? Um, do you feel like you have a good grasp of what your today's vision or version of the warrior ethos is and how you relate to it?
I'm still building it in. I'm still trying to take the lessons of what this might mean. Like when you use Michael Singer's quote of like, stop smoking. You want to know why you're smoking, just stop and see what comes up. And for me, it's like patience. Like I need to learn patience. If I start thinking about how long the projected recovery of this is, I get really depressed and really down. Like I don't know if I can do that. Like today, the smallest things were hard. And you want me to do that for like 9 more months to a year? Like, can I do that? Like, well, I can't think that much. Just like the AA guys, like I can't think about not drinking ever again, but I can think about not drinking for 24 hours. I have to take that approach, patience, and then just putting the work in and not letting all these small things get to me. Because I'll find workarounds for them. I've already found like how to shower, how to change. Like it's just the new adaptation for a while. And I know things will return, and I know I'll be fine. I know I'll be back at it at some point. I just hope. My fear is I won't be as strong as I was, and yeah, it's probably a reality, but not. That's not. We're talking like 5% probably difference. I probably won't even notice it. Hopefully, so that's coming up. Just not getting depressed, not getting discouraged, learning patience, learning the long game, not freaking out, just using that relax and release mantra and just watch it happen and not get attached to it, not get caught up in the ups and downs of the whole thing. So that's a version of endurance, I guess.
Well, I'm chuckling at your look. Like when you get daunted, it's daunting looking at the whole journey, right? What you have left to do versus what you're doing now. Um, Tony Robbins is trying to learn Taekwondo, and he's learning it from the guy who invented it. And they're throwing thousands of punches every day, and he's working for hours and hours. And he's like, "Master," he's like, "We've been throwing the same punch for 5 days in a row. Like, when are we going to learn the next punch?" And his master looks at him like worried. He goes, "Oh no, that's bad news. This is the next punch." And it's like everything that he's learning is building into the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And he doesn't have the discernment to see that it's all coming together,
The progression. Yeah.
the progression. And he's just doing the reps. And that's that's the you talked about crystallized wisdom, right?
Intelligence. Yeah.
Crystallized intelligence turning into wisdom. It's going forward, the dots don't connect, but they all connect looking backwards. And in the moment, we have to have faith. You know, I'm quoting Steve Jobs here. We have faith that this is all coming together for a purpose.
Yeah. Arthur Brooks. That's who it was. Crystallized Intelligence. From Strength to Strength is the book. Great book. Yep.
So many good books dropped here on the pod.
Yeah. We'll link what what we can, what we think's important. We'll put it in there. Yeah, like you said, this will be an ongoing conversation about the warrior aspect of this podcast, um, and what it means for the listener, for us, and all the other cool things we talk about, and the cool guests that are going to be coming on at some point.
Continue to come on. We've had some cool ones, Phil and Doctor.
Yeah, we'll have Dr. Glover soon, the No More Mr. Nice Guy author. I think there's a chance we can have him on soon. It should be cool, and go from there. The best would be have Connor on, but I don't know if I can swing it. He's just in such a demand, but maybe. I'm doing one of his other coaching things, so I talk to him once a week, so I could conceivably ask at some point. I just feel a little bit.
Well, let's have some we'll have some free products that we can at least monetize when he does come on.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's got a lot of good stuff out there. Anyways, future things to come. That's that's fun to think about. However, relates to you in warriorship. Kind of think about what your ethos is. What's your code? What darkness might you be going through that you can apply these things to? You can use our stories as reflection points of what things you might have gone through, or if you do go through it at some point, you have this podcast to turn on and go, what the heck they talk about? Oh, there you go. But yeah,
These, principles are only valuable in hard times. It's easy to have faith and have a larger vision when you're healthy, your bills are paid, you got happy, good relationships. Anyone can be faithful in those circumstances.
spot on. Jock always says everyone wants to be a Navy SEAL when it's sunny out or something like that. Not when it's fucking freezing at 0 dark 30 in the water or whatever.
Well, first of all, they can have it. I don't want it. I don't want it in good weather in San Diego. I certainly don't want it in bad weather in Ramadi. So they can keep it.
Yeah, that's why they have such an nutrition rate. Those guys are amazing. Anyways, yeah. Do all the things that everyone says in the end of the podcast. Share, like, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. It actually does help. I always got annoyed when I used to listen to podcasts and YouTubers say that, but now I know why, because it gets the word out. The algorithm likes it. So do share, do push that plus button, subscribe. Tell us we suck or tell us you like us. Doesn't matter. As long as something's happening, I think makes things happen for the podcast. So do it. Closing thoughts?
Um, I I think I've said enough.
If you're complete.
I am complete.
We're complete for the week. All right.
Stay busy, Warriors. We'll talk soon.
Yes, we're out.